Quick question. How many of you are wearing glasses or contacts right now? Or squinting at this screen because you took them off 5 minutes ago? Here's a number that should bother you. In 1971, about a quarter of Americans were nearsighted. Today it's closer to half. In parts of East Asia, over 90% of young adults now need corrective lenses. 90%. That's not a small shift. That's an entire species losing a sense in the span of 2 or 3 generations. And here's the part that makes no sense at first. Genes don't move that fast. Evolution doesn't rewrite an organ in 60 years. So something else happened. Something about the way we live changed the shape of our eyeballs, literally changed their physical shape. And it happened so recently that your grandparents' generation looked completely different from yours, eye test-wise. So what did ancient humans actually see? And what did we lose? Let's start with the hunter-gatherers, because the evidence here is honestly kind of stunning. There are still a handful of groups alive today who live the old way. Outdoors constantly, no screens, no books, hunting and foraging across open land. When researchers test their eyesight, nearsightedness in these groups sits under 5%. In some, it's close to 0. Compare that to modern Seoul or Singapore, where the number flips almost entirely the other way. Same species, same genome, more or less. Completely different eyes. Ancient humans, on the whole, almost certainly saw the world in sharp focus, far and near, for their entire lives. So why does this happen at all? This is where it gets genuinely interesting, because most people have no idea their eyeball is not a fixed object. It's growing tissue, especially in childhood, and it takes its shape from how it's used. Spend your day focused on things close to your face, a page, a screen, and the eye reads that as a signal. It elongates slightly to make near focus easier. The catch is that a longer eyeball throws off where light lands on the retina. Distance vision blurs. That elongation doesn't reverse. Once it happens, it's permanent. Your eye adapted to the life you gave it, and now you're stuck with the trait. Now here's the twist almost nobody expects. For years the leading theory was simple. Close-up work causes myopia, so cut the reading, cut the screens. Turns out that's only half the story. When scientists actually tested it directly, more reading versus less reading, the effect was much smaller than expected. So somebody flipped the question. What if the problem isn't what kids are doing up close, but what they're missing outdoors? That single question changed everything. Kids who spent more time outside had dramatically lower rates of myopia, even when they did just as much reading and screen time as the kids stuck indoors. Distance from the page wasn't the deciding factor. Light was. Specifically, sunlight triggers dopamine release in the retina, and dopamine appears to be one of the chemical brakes on eye elongation. More outdoor light, more dopamine, slower growth, lower risk. A cloudy day outside still hits roughly 10,000 lux. A well-lit classroom hits maybe 500. Sitting indoors all day, your eye is running on a tiny fraction of the light signal it evolved to expect. Ancient children got that signal automatically. Not because anyone understood retinal chemistry, but because there was no indoors to retreat to. Every waking hour was outdoor light. Scanning the horizon at dawn for movement. Tracking prints on the ground. Then lifting the gaze back to the tree line. Foraging in short bursts. Crouch. Look. Stand. Walk. Look again. Never locked on one close point for more than a minute or two. Then evening around the fire. Faces a few feet away. And then true darkness. Not phone glow darkness. Not street light through the curtain darkness. Actual black. That daily swing between blazing daylight and total night may itself have helped regulate healthy eye growth, a rhythm modern bedrooms, lit by chargers and screens and city glow, rarely provide anymore. Now compare that to an average school day. 7 hours at a desk, eyes locked on a point less than a meter away. An enclosed lunchroom. More screen time for homework in the evening. Maybe, if you're lucky, 20 minutes outside. The visual diet of a prehistoric child and the visual diet of a modern child aren't just different. They're nearly opposite in every dimension that appears to matter. And this is exactly why East Asia shows the sharpest numbers on the planet. It's not genetics. 60 years ago, myopia rates in South Korea sat around 15 to 20%. One generation later, it's over 90. That's not a new gene pool. That's an entirely new childhood, longer school days, intense academic pressure, and a collapse in outdoor time, all landing on the same developing eyes at once. Here's the proof that it really is environmental and not genetic. In 2010, Taiwan rolled out a school program requiring kids to spend 2 mandatory hours outdoors every single day. Not for fitness, purely because of this research. The early results showed slower myopia progression compared to schools that didn't adopt it. If this were baked into DNA, sending kids outside for 2 hours wouldn't move the needle at all. It moved the needle, which means the fix, at least in principle, isn't complicated. It's not about banning screens or burning your books. It's daylight, the one input every prehistoric child received by default, simply because there was nowhere else to be. But here's the part of the story almost nobody tells, and it's my favorite piece of this whole puzzle. A small number of ancient humans were probably nearsighted too, and that wasn't necessarily a disaster for them. There's a theory from ophthalmology called the adaptive myopia hypothesis, and the logic runs like this. On a hunt, blurry distance vision is dangerous. You don't spot the predator or the prey until it's already close. Bad trade, evolutionarily speaking. But the same eye that struggles with distance is often unusually sharp up close. And a prehistoric group needed people who were extremely good at close, detailed work. Napping stone tools. Identifying medicinal plants by their fine leaf structure. Reading the subtle detail in a track in the dirt. Some researchers point to the astonishingly fine detail in certain ancient carvings and cave engravings as evidence that whoever made them had exactly this kind of close-up visual precision. The person who couldn't see the horizon clearly might have been the best toolmaker in camp. This idea shows up again, strangely, centuries later in medieval European monasteries. The monks producing illuminated manuscripts spent entire days doing painstaking close work in dim rooms, and historians believe myopia rates among them were noticeably higher than in the general population. Some monasteries appear to have specifically valued monks with mild nearsightedness for exactly this work, because they could pick out brushstroke-level detail that sharper-sighted monks simply couldn't resolve. It's worth noting that glasses for nearsightedness weren't even invented until roughly 2 centuries after glasses for farsightedness. One theory for the delay is straightforward. Myopia was rare enough, and the people who had it had often found a niche that used it, that fixing it wasn't seen as urgent. Which brings us to the uncomfortable part. Correcting myopia and preventing it are not the same thing. A pair of glasses fixes what your eye is doing right now, but by the time a child gets a prescription, the elongation has already happened, and it often keeps progressing through the teenage years, which is why prescriptions tend to get stronger year after year. High myopia isn't just an inconvenience either. It measurably raises the risk of retinal detachment, glaucoma, and macular degeneration later in life. So the real stakes aren't just, can you read the board without squinting? They're whether your eyes are developing in a way that sets you up for serious, sight-threatening problems decades down the line. Every other mismatched story on this channel follows a familiar shape. Your ancient brain still craves something that used to be scarce, fat, sugar, rest, and it overreaches in a world where that thing is now everywhere. Myopia doesn't work that way. Nobody's eyes are seeking this out. It's not a craving running wild. It's a developmental process, fine-tuned over millions of years for a specific kind of environment, quietly going slightly wrong because that environment simply isn't there anymore. You didn't choose it. Nobody built modern life to damage children's eyesight. School, work, screens, they all make sense on their own terms. But stacked together, they've quietly erased the single environmental input your eyes were built to expect. The good news, if there is one, is that this isn't fixed in your genes. It's fixed in your habits, and habits can change. The children growing up without this problem today aren't special. They're just outside more. Getting, almost by accident, exactly what every child on Earth used to get automatically, back when there was nowhere else to be but under the sun.